Hi, 509. Hopefully, this is just a very quick review of educational research. Like I mentioned in the opening email, this course is more dense material than most of our other ed tech courses. That does not mean that it cannot be fun. We will try to make research fun. But before you get into either of the major assessments or anything else that we do in 509, we need to just have a quick little rewind to EDLE 501, which is probably the first course you ever took in your program, to make sure that we remember some of the fundamentals of ed research. So what we are going to be doing, we are not going to be conducting any research, but we are going to be looking at a lot of research. And the goal of educational research is really to explain or predict or control at some points educational phenomenons. Most of the times we're looking to solve a problem, looking to improve some type of performance, things like that. Steps to conducting research. So when you start reading these research articles, you will see that they are all pretty much in the same structure. So they're going to identify a research problem. They're going to talk about what others have learned through research on that problem. So a review of the literature. They're going to do a purpose for the research. Then they're going to collect that data. They're going to analyze it. And then they're going to tell you what they think they found and what it might mean in different educational situations. So hopefully these are, again, review of all of these terms. So a variable is something that the researcher tries to control. A hypothesis is something that the researcher thinks will happen. The independent variable is what you're manipulating or what changes. And the dependent variable is at the very end, meaning how you measure if the independent variable had an impact or not. So I'm not one for definitions. Let's look at an example. Ms. Smith is wondering if a flipped learning module would improve student achievement. So she implemented it, and then the same assessment that she was giving for her math fractions lessons, the average score has gone from a 77% to an 87%. So right now, I just kind of want you to think, what would the independent variable and dependent variable be for these? What would you think? So the independent variable, what she is manipulating is the type of instruction she does for her math fractions lessons. The dependent variable is how you measure that. So that would be that rubric that she grades the assessment with. And what could be two different hypotheses in conjunction with this study? So what would Ms. Smith think? She would say, okay, I think this is going to cause an increase in achievement. Or she could think, oh, I think this is going to cause a decrease in achievement. Okay, two types of ed research. Y'all are more than welcome to read these definitions, which I'm sure Dr. Shaman or Gocho or whoever you have 501 crammed into your brain. But what I like to say is qualitative research is mostly words. Quantitative research is mostly numbers. So let's look at a few examples. First, in a violence study, researchers obtained data consisting of scores of children on a survey. Scores is going to be numbers, so that's going to be quantitative. Research collect data from interview questions. You can see that is not numbers, that is going to be words, so that would be qualitative. And then, if a teacher wants to see if students' reading abilities have improved after implementing a new program, she can look at quantitative data, which would be iLeap or LEAP scores, or she could ask students to read to her from a difficult text, and that would lend itself to qualitative, but it would actually depend on if what instrument she's using to evaluate those students reading to her. Okay, so there's two groups in quantitative studies. Again, that's numbered studies. The experimental group receives a treatment or some new thing. The control group does not. So in education, Here's an example. If Mr. Smith provides calculators to his second block but not to his third block, the experimental group would be the second block, and the traditional learning would be the control group. That would be the third block. As teachers, you guys absolutely know what formative and summative assessment and evaluation are. Just know that in research, you could be using formative, you could be using summative, you could be using both. And formative and summative could also be words or numbers or a combination of both. Now we're going to talk about ethics just a tiny bit and what you might be seeing in the studies that you read. Again, we're not going to be conducting any of our own studies this semester, but just so that you can understand the language in some of these research studies that you do. Basically, in 1974, a law was passed that said that you must ask an institutional review board and do a lot of paperwork before you can conduct any type of study on human subjects. Now, human subjects, that makes me think of medical and weird sciences, but no, if you're collecting data on your students, you may or may not have to go through the IRB or the Institutional Review Board. For example, up here, if Mr. Smith was giving calculators to one block but not the other, is that really ethical? Is he giving one group a fair advantage over the other? Well, you would have to ask the Institutional Review Board, and they would let you know. So a few other things that you must know: if you ever do a study with your students, you must have informed consent. If the subjects of your study are under 18, that means parents. And then we've talked about this a little bit in our assistive technology using examples. Your subjects, in this case your students, should have anonymity and confidentiality while you are conducting your research. Again, parents, if your subjects are under 18, should have informed consent forms. You might remember this from your undergraduate, if you were recent graduates, where you had to send out parental consent forms. If you were videotaping yourself while teaching during student teaching, these things have to be filled out. Go back to the nightmares of Praxis PLT, right? And very first Ed 250. The difference between validity and reliability is something that you will absolutely see in most studies that you are going to read this semester. Validity is, how do you know that the test or instrument you're using actually measures what it says it measures? And reliability is, how do you know that if the test was given again, would it be a similar or same results? Okay, and here's getting really to what we're going to be looking at. What type of data are you going to be looking at? Remember, quantitative data is numbers. So in education, that's all of our standardized testing, norm reference test, criterions reference test, intelligence test, IQ, all of that good stuff is quantitative data. Qualitative data, again, words, your observations, your interviews, your documents, videos, emails, all of that stuff is your qualitative data. Okay, so this was your brief review. And there was one more thing I wanted to show. Hang on, let me pull it up. I'll be right back. Last thing I wanted to share with you guys, or reshare with you guys, is how to find these types of articles. So right now I just went to nichols.edu, scrolled down and clicked on library. I'm now going to go to databases, and you can select multiple databases. ERIC is my go-to for educational articles. And you log in with your Nichols ID. Luckily, mine was saved there for me. I wouldn't have remembered it. And here is where you search. So say you want to do flipped learning, and you want to do achievement, you see HIEV, and you want to do math. So these are the different topics that you are going to be interested in. Go ahead and scroll down and look at some of the things that we can do. So first of all, we want to make sure we get a full text here. We're not going to want to go digging around on the internet to find something. Next, we're going to want it peer reviewed. If we click that box, normally we will get mostly research articles, which is what we are looking for. Which leads me to the probably most important thing that I talk about today is the difference between a research article and a non-research article. So I just did a quick Google search and I came across this article about schools conducting lockdown drills. This is a topic that, say, I was interested in and I wanted to look at some research in. If you just quickly scroll through this article, one big red flag that this is not a research article is that it is, first of all, only 5 pages long. And then secondly, it doesn't follow that pattern that we talked about of what a research article does. So we're talking about identifying a problem, review the literature, have a purpose, data, interpret the data, report findings. It doesn't really do that here. This is what we call a practitioner-based article, which they are wonderful. They definitely have their place. In this course, we will mostly be looking for research-based articles. And I pulled this one, and you can see that it does follow the pattern of abstract and then a literature review of different topics, and it'll go into data and stuff like that. So when you are getting your research articles off of the Nichols databases, once you find an article that you like, grab the full text, and then before really diving into it and spending a lot of time, you want to really make sure that it is based on research and it is not just a practitioner-based article. That also being said, our field of study, educational technology, changes so very quickly. For example, this article is in 2019. I consider that definitely still valid. But if you would pull up an article from 2000, even 2005, even 2010, the world of ed tech changes so quickly that we really want to make sure that we're getting articles that are current. Hope that helped. A little review of ed research. Look forward to working with you guys again. Bye.